Cognition consists of all info-computational processes necessary to keep living agents' organizational integrity on all different levels of existence. Cognition is info-computation. So I need those two basic processes to explain cognition. And very important thing, cognition is equivalent with the process of life. And there I used the approach of Maturana and Varela, who already in 1980s argued that life is the same thing as cognition. It would say that even the smallest, the simplest, and the most primitive organisms possess rudimentary cognition. And then this cognition gets more and more complex, and we get to complex organisms like humans. Now to information, how to understand information. Information is the difference that makes the difference. It was the definition by Gregory Bateson. So it is a difference in the world that makes a difference for an agent. And here the world includes agents themselves too. So the agent is self-reflectively identifying differences even within its or his or her memories and so on. So we have an expanded definition. Information expresses the fact that the system is in a certain configuration that is correlated to the configuration of another system. So you follow information as propagation of some disturbance or something in the physical system or agent. This is Carl Hewitt's definition of information. So how do we imagine this idea about difference that makes the difference? If I look in the microscope as an agent, I'm a cognitive agent looking at the world through the microscope, and I see nothing, so no difference for me. And suddenly, when I change the setup of the microscope, suddenly something appears. And this is the difference that makes the difference for me. For me, because I can see light and so on and so forth, I can manage microscopes. And if I continue, I can make number of differences. So those relative networks of differences make information for me. So I can first perceive the differences in the world, then I read off what I have in my memories, and then I compare what I see and what I know, and I say, okay, this is a bacterium in the microscope or whatever it is. So information could be seen as a structure or a fabric of reality. And that is an idea proposed by a philosopher of information, Luciano Floridi, and even in another form by John Say, which argues that information for an agent constitutes the fabric of reality. Reality consists of informational structures organized on different levels of abstraction or resolution. So I would say information is only half of reality. We base our idea of reality on information. There are several more people like Latko Vedral, who is a physicist, former physicist, who also claims and argues that information is all we have to start with to construct our field of reality. So this is what I told you, information is the difference. That makes a difference. For a living agents, information is the fabric of reality, as I told you. But the knowledge of structures is only half the story. So we know the structures through information. But we are interested in changes in those structures. And those are processes or information dynamics. You would recognize the old formulation of being and becoming. So being is what is, that's the structure, and becoming is the change, like computation. So information processing will be taken as the most general definition of computation. And we will see the whole of the universe or the whole of the nature as a network of computational processes. huge informational structures to computational processes. That's what I call info-computation. So idea that you can reconstruct the behavior and even cognitive behavior of different agents based on information and computation. Or in this picture, if you have ontology, which is informational structures, reality is made of information. Agency is computation, but those two are completely connected all the time. So in each next step, when you apply dynamics and change the structure of the universe or of your system, your computation will start from another point. So it is always very central. So cognition after computation and information. Cognition, and now the problem is that normally cognition is defined from the perspective of a human and not from the perspective of any living organism. So this is the definition which you will find in the dictionary. Cognition is the mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and senses. Okay? And it comes from Latin, get to know. So, and then, if you see it like mental activity, you don't think about bacteria in the first place, or wasps. But in my research, I followed Matron and Varela, who have this explicit idea that any living organism actually is cognitive. In order to survive in the world, they must have cognitive abilities. It's interesting to see how cognitive science formed from different other sciences. Those are influencing what we think about cognition. So there is psychology, which is part of the research, philosophy, linguistics, anthropology, biology, neuroscience, even artificial intelligence. And here I have a reference to study of behavior in monkeys in order to try to get some similarities between cognition that we find in primates and what we find in humans. So it's obvious that if we follow this idea that nothing makes sense in the biology except in the light of evolution, we should care not only about humans and apes and mice, but also about very simple organisms. And this is also the question. There are species which are symbolic, like we are. We have language, and maybe some primates have some rudimentary language, but since then there are not so many more living organisms with language. But there are also sub-symbolic or the simpler signaling types of communication and cognition. And that is what we find in many other organisms. Those are just different approaches in cognitive science, different models. So there are dynamical systems, models, neurosymbolic integration, Bayesian models, and so on. So when we talk about computationalism, very often people recall the old version of computationalism, which was Turing machine. So one would say human brain is basically human brain is basically a Turing machine. But it's really not realistic. That was a hypothesis which was tested many times and it didn't work. Because human brain is much more complex than simple manipulation that we find in Turing machine. And the basic characteristics that we have, characteristics of life, are ability to differentiate and synthesize information, make a choice, to adapt, to evolve, and learn in an unpredictable world. And that requires computational mechanisms or models which are more complex than Turing machine.